Ready? Someone's come.
Ooh. Hello.
So this is the quiet bit while we wait for people to join us. We've just opened the floodgates, so none of us are sure what to do in this bit. But as you can see, we've got the poets I promised are here. We've got Carrie Etter next to me. You're not Carrie Etter. We've got Helen Calcutt. We've got Louise Fazackerly. And we've got Shazia Qureshi. And the other person who I haven't introduced is Cynthia Miller. She is our one of our newly appointed board members at Verve Press. But tonight she is our chatter. She's going to be running the chat, which is how you, the audience, can participate in our Q&A. So she'll be the one you're hearing from when you ask things on the text. So please feel free. And if anyone's too loud, tell us or turn the volume down.
All right. We've got about 50 attendees already, which is fantastic. Should we give it maybe like another minute or so, just waiting for people to filter in? And if you're just joining, if you do have any questions, fantastic questions either for the panelists or just questions in general, pop them into the chat and we'll do our level best to answer them. And I'll also be the promo gal because I've got all the pamphlets here, which you should purchase.
We've got a little bit of fireworks going on in my garden. Not me personally, a little fireworks soundtrack and a dog cheerfully barking. I think it's really excited about the poetry.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. What it's like in Wigan. What are we on? Right, I think we'll start. I think we've had a lot of people saying I can't read the stuff at the same time as talk, so Cynthia's going to answer the stuff. Right, let's start. So, welcome to the Verve Poetry Press pamphlet launch, the autumn pamphlet launch. I'm Stuart Bartholomew. I'm the publisher at Verve Poetry Press. So that's why I'm here trying to host. I'm really looking forward to tonight. We've got 4 incredible poets for you. Quite different to each other, I think you'll agree, but we are very into difference at Verve. There's a lot of amazing poetry being created in a lot of different ways, and we embrace all excellent poetry. So that's what we're about. Tonight's reading is we're all going to take turns, so we'll have the poets one at a time reading about 10 minutes from their pamphlets. I'll introduce them. And I've got Louise on very big picture on my screen, which is very nervy. But I'll introduce all the poets as they come and say a bit about them and say a bit about why I like them, maybe. And after that, we are open for Q&A. But the Q&A, your way to answer to ask our questions is via our chat. And Cynthia, who is running the chat, will collate and edit perhaps and tell me what to ask later on. I've got questions of my own that I'll also ask. So does that make sense to everyone? We are of course hoping you will feel either, if you haven't already, you may have already had lots of people buying pamphlets off us this week. If you haven't bought pamphlets off us yet, these are they. All our postage and packing is free until the end of October. So there's a poet you love tonight. I will pick these up individually as we go. There's a poet you love tonight. Please support them by buying a pamphlet, and it won't cost you any extra than if you'd gone to a shop. Or if we were in a live event, imagine a live event. Okay. So I think that's all my preamble for now. I'm sure I'll think of some other things. The first poet I'm going to introduce you to is Helen Calka. So we just released her amazing pamphlet Somehow. and it is an incredible read. It's also pretty. I love it. The jacket's by Catherine Shears, who's the better known partner of a Welsh poet. Don't know his name. And sorry. And anyway, it's quite a serious book, so I'm going to serious up now. I'm thrilled that we got to publish this. I've known Helen for quite a long time in my poetry life. She is a fantastic Birmingham-based poet. There are a few. She's one of them. I know that she's produced, this is her third book. She's had a collection out with V.Press called Unable Mother, and her first pamphlet was out with Perdika, and that was called Sudden Rain. They're all amazing, but this is the most amazing. Because she just gets better and better. She's working on her collection as we speak, which I'm really looking forward to. Her first major collection, I think. But this work is a really moving piece of work. It came out of a project that we did together a couple of years ago, which was our 84 project, where we did an anthology based on the issue of suicide. And lots of Carrie's in it, which is great. Lots of amazing poets contributed poems, free of charge, and all the profits we made in the first year went to Calm as part of their 84 project to help with the big issue of male suicide in the UK. So that's how we got started, but you know, I'm really pleased because I think it is Helen did feel that she had to give us her pamphlet after that, which I'm very pleased about. So that's all I'm going to say. Over to Helen.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm just going to wait for the things to go off. There we go. Okay, so hello everybody and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us all this evening. This is very different and very new for me. I've never done a webinar poetry reading before, but it feels quite nice. It feels quite intimate. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to hearing everybody else read as well. So I'm just going to dive straight in. Obviously, as Stuart has said, the book I'm reading from tonight is Somehow. And I'm going to start with a poem called Light. Stuart actually said when we were putting this collection together, I don't think there is a poem of yours that you've done that doesn't have the word light in it. And I checked and I think he's right. So I obviously have this sort of strange relationship with the word and what it means. But with this particular poem, it was one of the first ones I wrote after Matt passed away. And I just remember it being a particularly bright September, October, November sort of period. It kind of felt crude, but it also felt like it meant something. And I just started to write around that feeling. So I'm going to read it for you now. So this is Light. Let's check you can see me. For days now, Light has been walking in through the window. For days, the leaves have followed it. When I look one way, they flock the sun. Their foldings flicker like innate conversation. For days, I have wanted the light to be just light. But the way she carries her body is tipsy thin, and the trees are too. They lift up their hair and weep, tipsy song. And they are leaning and talking and making everything about the circumstances of the light. The way she folds and clutters and tussles and mutters and makes everything bright in the room. It feels so crude. All the aching corners I wanted to be hard have softened to the tune of her touch. In her brightest moments, as I've cowered and cried or gone crazy on the bed, light has thrown light and pulled the sobbing up over my head. And they have said, grief is a family of birds thrown from the nest. That light in this capacity must be some coincidence. He isn't in the room. He didn't come. My hands aren't wings and the roof doesn't burn. I hope the sound is okay. I'm assuming it is. If it isn't, just let me know in the messages maybe. Okay, so this next one is about, it's quite a hard poem to hear for some, so I'm actually going to issue a little trigger warning now, because it does have some very specific suicide imagery, what I would say. So if you are in touch with this subject and you feel like it's something that you're very sensitive to at the moment, perhaps wait, maybe not listen to this one, or you can turn the sound off at any time and I can send you a text version of the poem if you like. But moving on now from that, this is about finding a body, this next poem, but it's also a found poem. All of the words that I use here are from Matt's post-mortem report. And I think what I was trying to do here when I had that report and I was reading it, and I just started to underline little phrases and little words that kind of stood out to me. I think I was just, in that process, I was trying to get to grips with the reality of what had happened to him. And also, just from a writer's perspective, the language was incredibly cold against, this profound loss. And that sort of polarization between the cold language and the loss that I felt struck me as really interesting and something to explore. So this is found. She found him in the dark at the bottom of the stairs. Body of a male hanging by ligature. The mark was deep, 1 centimetre, but no scar. She had to cut the suspension point with scissors. The ligature in circumference, 47 centimetres. Impression is of someone with moderate anxiety, who appeared at times of domestic distress, ideated suicide but denied intent. Larynx, trachea, bronchi, normal. Mouth, pharynx, esophagus, unremarkable. History of anxiety since 2006. Prescribed citalopram, 20 milligrams, 20 milligrams. No ligature received. There is nothing significant about the deceased. Okay, checking the time. I think the next one I'll do is a very, very different poem to the one that I just read. It's quite simply about the wonder and wisdom of children, and thank you, Louise, and the healing places they can bring you to. This is a conversation with my daughter about my brother's suicide. She is awake. The moon is bright and the clouds have parted. The trees are painted trees, living a still life. She tells me my brother is in the moon. I've bathed her, given her milk, and as I fold the sheets from her knees to her lap, she asks me how he died. He was very sad, I say. and she seems to understand. She rubs the milk away from her lips with her hands as if the moon had kissed her, and then asks why. I try to explain. Sadness can make you very tired. It can make you want to sleep. It can make you want to close your eyes on everything. Her hands are leaves resting on the bed covers. She asks me if I miss him, and when I say I do, she asks me again how he died. If the sadness of missing him will make me die. I hold her then. I accept the weight of her. I can feel her widening like the stillness of a tree, my child coming into a still life. Then we talk about the moon being the shape of an egg, upside down. Watch branches touch on drifting clouds and agree we want to see everything. Okay, I think I've got time. I'm just going to do two more, one long and one short. So this penultimate poem from Somehow is, I have never actually read this. I've read quite a few of these other readings, but I've never read this one before out loud to anybody other than myself, I think. This is more of a uplifting poem for me anyway. Just a tiny little bit of background. We went camping just like a couple of years after Matt had died, I think. And there was this, it was in Wales, and there was this massive storm at night. And I genuinely thought we were going to take off. Like I was in the tent, and I could feel it flapping. And then my daughter was there, and my partner was outside banging the tent poles and trying to keep it all down. So it was kind of funny, as well as really scary. But I remember at the time just suddenly lying there with all this going on, this big storm, really feeling Matt just kind of enter the space. And I don't know why I felt that at the time, I just did. And it didn't feel like a sad thing, it felt like a good thing. It felt like, I don't know, something was telling me that he was still there and he was still existing in the elements, and this crazy tumultuous storm that was happening was somehow reimagining him and bringing him back to me just for that time. So I wrote this poem the day after, and I'm going to share it with you now. This is the penultimate one, and this is called Brother Blowing. Somewhere, I am somewhere between sleeping and waking, the whole blowing silk of our tent lifting and inflating, needy as a lung. Midnight perhaps, or not long after. The moon has disappeared. The black wind cries in the leaves. The whole sky's a blowy saint. The sound of trees. My child lies asleep in the corner, unaware. A storm is moving into our room, conductive as a hand. I fold my blanket over her ears, her precious head. All around, the sky that lives out there is moving in here. Our bed space swings, the tassels knock as coast clouds sent in far over the dark unrest the body of our gentle room. They'd said it would come. It's both sad and beautiful to watch the light blow, watch it go with the air so easy, then return again as easily. I lie, I breathe within thin walls, astounded. I imagine jellyfish brains smashed over a rock, that we are the only light, while our tenting soul flaps to climb, high as high. Oh, are we anchored just right? And it's then you drop flight, hollowed bird, my brother blowing. You smile as you enter the room. You make breathing noises. You set down the two ends of your being like cloth. You set down the two ends of your being like the wings of a dove. You wrap the cloak of your exposure around my eyes, strangely warm. And when the tent poles shake, I can feel you've come, feel that death isn't dark, that the dead aren't bright. They just come this way when you need their light. And I truly see you, my God. I truly feel you here. It's so good to be like this, fearful, but alive, alive and so very, very far from where you died. Oh, my brother, how you're blowing in my ears and eyes. And the last one I'm going to read, I'm not going to introduce it, I'm just going to read it. Thank you. Here we go. This is the last poem. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this short little excerpt of the book here. These are such precious poems to me, and I feel very privileged to be able to share them with you all this evening. So thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. Here we go. This is the last poem. Grief is like a miracle, like opening your mouth for water and finding rain. You stand for days outside the body of a silent church. Snow touches the stillness of the windows and you long for their acceptance, a few tears. You tell yourself the door isn't closed, it's open and weeping, like the orange rose that never bloomed all spring, then one day in autumn opened atriums of colour. Now all the roses gather and the door is open-armed. People think I'm strange, touching my lips to the wood, but ice is thawing to love inside my body. I don't know how else to show my gratitude. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. And this is Somehow. Here she is. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. That was great. I loved sharing those with you. Thank you.
So that was incredible, as I knew it would be. Thank you for that. They're difficult subjects, and I know that it's something you not only do that incredibly well, but you also teach it well as well. And I know you've run workshops before on kind of writing trauma and finding ways to express really difficult subjects. And you've certainly managed it yourself, so it's really lovely to have you read. Thank you. Okay, so next up, you might have heard of Carrie Etter. I've heard of her. This is her pamphlet, The Shooting Gallery, which I'm super thrilled to have on the press. It was such a dream, really, when Carrie said she'd do something for us. Because we met at Verve, didn't we? We met at the festival, and you know, that one of the things I really like doing is tapping people up who've been at the festival and seeing if they want to do something. So that worked. Doesn't always, but it did with Carrie, and you know, that was just wonderful. What to say about Carrie Etter? She's what I'd call an established poet, in that she's 4 collections in. I keep saying this and people kind of frown, but I think she is kind of one of the leading prose poets of the here and now. She's very amazing at prose poems. She writes other poems as well, but this pamphlet is all prose, so we're happy with that. Some quite difficult subjects again. I'm going to let Carrie explain what happens in her book and what kind of aims of it are. And I know she's got lots of slides for you as well. I do want to read what Muneza Alvi said about the pamphlet, because I thought that would be a good way into it. So Muneza says, the spare lucid sentences of these prose poems make a brilliant and urgent response to the Czech artist Toyen's surreal line drawings with their images of war and childhood. The second of these two linked series features US school and university shootings, and of central resonance is a shooting incident which took place in 2012 in a school in Normal, Illinois, where Carrie Etter grew up. This is a work of powerful restraint, but fertile also, proving that there is no such thing as a blank canvas. So let's enjoy, as I know we will, but also feel the deep kind of gravitas of these poems from Carrie Etter. Over to you, Carrie.
Thank you, Stuart. And thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And thank you to Verve for publishing and promoting my work. I'd also like to thank Linda Black, who I know is here tonight, for providing the wonderful cover. And I'm going to start with that slide now. The first series of prose poems in this pamphlet responds to the Czech transgender artist Toyen's series of line drawings titled The Shooting Gallery and completed in 1939 to 1940. The Shooting Gallery 2. When I was 8 or 10 and wore dresses, to some adults I appeared a mere outline, girl shape, faceless. This girl's puff sleeves make me think Anne of Green Gables. Oh, I remember child-sized desires, glee come easy. Those beribboned, pointed shoes, and yet the slack in her jump rope. Yes, in the field of broken glass, who would? The fool rooster eating the slivers as though they were kernels of corn. Just look at him now, splayed on his back, feet in the air. No wonder the girl's face has disappeared. The Shooting Gallery 5. Across the snowbound field, birds' nests, twigs interlaced to make a firm bowl, a bed, a place of rest. 20 on the ground, 1 aloft in a dead sapling. Where are the birds? Among the nests stand 2 man-made birdhouses, each with 2 tall arched openings, each decorated with miniature shuttered windows, a miniature stag's head. Where are the birds? There's no seeing inside the birdhouses or into the conical well of the sapling's nest. At this stage, we cannot confirm the number of living or dead. The Shooting Gallery 12. Is this the end of childhood? The castles constructed from building blocks look as though they've suffered an aerial bombardment. What with the missing roofs and broken towers? As for the rabbit emerging from a blasted fortress, once a girl named him. Once a girl, long gone, stroked his fur. So it was about midway into writing this particular series of poems that I realized that the conjunction I saw in Toyan's drawings, bringing together youth and violence, was a conjunction that I associated with US school and university shootings, which was really shocking to me at that moment when I made that connection. And so I began a second series of prose poems in response to these shootings. And the three I've chosen to read tonight respond to single images that were distributed in the mainstream media at the time of each shooting. And it really all begins with Columbine, though there were earlier shootings. The Shooting Gallery, Columbine High School, Colorado, 1999. Who knew that a teenage boy's brown pickup truck could sprout lilies, roses, carnations? And what about the balloons tied to the fender, side view mirror, and tailgate? Inside the cab, over the bed, cellophane wrapped bouquets rise amid cards, handwritten notes, a poem, until all the empty space fills, until absence becomes presence for a while. This next poem is the only prose poem that uses slashes. And I suppose that has to do with this one being the one where it became personal for me, where there was a shooting where in my hometown. The Shooting Gallery, Normal Community High School, Illinois, 2012. At first, what rattled was the proximity, the intimacy, gunfire only a mile from my family home. For days, I wore the knowledge like chainmail, my torso heavier, my shoulders newly weighted. I Googled. I found in my town Darnall's Gunworks and Ranges, CI shooting sports. I found photos of the aftermath, the brawny teacher leading a column of students away, away. The huddled parents waiting, the reunions, the mother and son. The son's t-shirt. A drawing of a boy wearing his baseball cap backwards. His eye to the viewfinder of a machine gun. Its long belt of cartridges ready. Mother and son and his t-shirt. This is where I come from. The last poem I'd like to read tonight, I chose with my thoughts toward the forthcoming election. And I want to thank everyone again so much for coming out, and for Stuart and Cynthia for the wonderful support. It's been really a wonderful experience. The Shooting Gallery, Umpqua Community College, Oregon, 2015. President Obama stands at a podium bearing the presidential seal, his eyes closed. Is he praying? There's a long white table to either side of him. One bears all the paraphernalia of a college science classroom. Beakers, a Bunsen burner, glass test tubes, a microscope. On the other table lie 18 gun casings. If you look closely, you can see Obama biting his lower lip. Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful, wonderful, Karen.
Thank you so much for having me.
So that was an amazing reading, and is what's interesting to me about that is how the images kind of add to the poems, but also having read the poems without the images, how the poems kind of jump to life on their own as well, and it's a really interesting kind of way to look at poetry, isn't it? And the other thing that really hits home is your kind of connection to that issue, really, the issue of particularly of school shootings, and we watched those from across here. Bad things happen in the UK, but nothing seems to be quite the same as those kind of periodic school shootings that occur in the US, and just trying to understand and grapple with it. And I think what's great about what you're doing is that the descriptive approach is kind of probably the only approach in a lot of ways. You can't solve things, but you can describe what's happening. So a superb, powerful reading there, Carrie. Really enjoyed it. We keep saying enjoyment isn't the word, but it is, it is.
Well, that's the thing is I keep, when I've been sending out copies of the pamphlet to people and saying, I hope you enjoy it. It's like, well, I think what I mean, and actually I try to remember who it was who said, well, you mean appreciate.
Yeah.
But that also sounds like I'm asking people to kind of make a judgment on it. So I just leave it alone, and hopefully people appreciate the poems.
Yeah, and I think partly we like experiencing, I suppose we like experiencing difficult subjects because it feels important to us, but also we can come out again, I suppose, a lot of us. And so thank you so much. Thank you. So our next poet is going to be Louise Fazackerly. This is her book, her pamphlet. Came out just right at the beginning of September, so this was the first one of the 4. Louise is one of these people who, she's the only person, in fact, who's got 2 books with Verve. Did you know that? This is her other book. The other book here, The Liters, which is fantastic too, but we're not talking about that today. But I was really thrilled when she brought me these poems to publish. Basically, I think I'm Louise's printer. Is that what it is? She kind of turns up, says, here's some poems, get them out, will you? And that's what I do. I think these are going to fit right in tonight because, again, the subject is war to an extent. And, I think this is Louise's take on what kind of modern war poetry would look like, and also poetry very centred in the north, and with the issues and very singular experiences that go on in that part of the country. I'm going to read what Ian Macmillan said about these poems, and then you can explain why he's even talking about your poems, Louise. I think it's to do with you being on the Verve, isn't it, with them and him. So you can tell us all about that. But let me read what he said. In this astonishing pamphlet, Louise Fazackerly shines a passionate and compassionate light on lives lived in the swirling vortex that is the 21st century. Voices shout from the rooftops, cower in small rooms in family homes, and cry out in pain in battlefields. Hear these voices, read this work. I'm super thrilled to have Louise reading with us tonight. I'm really looking forward to this. And over to you.
Okay, hi everyone. We're all like heartbroken, aren't we? There's such powerful stories. This pamphlet started life as like a mini commission I wrote for New Voices for BBC Radio 3, and it kind of started life as like a story of my relationship with the father of my children, who's a soldier, and he came back from Afghanistan with PTSD. But as I developed it into a pamphlet, actually it grew to be a little bit more about economic conscription and about trying to connect with people from other countries who are affected by war. One thing I want you to know about this pamphlet is it's got a mix of really, really long poems and little tiny ones. And the tiny poems are called Land Days, which is a 2-line folk poetic form from the Pashtun people. So like Pakistan-Afghanistan border. And it's a form used by women where the culture is to take the 2 lines, to twist them, to make them your own and send them back. And it's kind of a forbidden form because these women are talking about sex and war and things that maybe they shouldn't speak of in public because of the honour of their family. So later on I'll drop a link into the chat so you can have a really amazing read of an article. I didn't write it, it was someone for the New York Times, I think, who explored this poetic form. So that's kind of what I want you to know about the pamphlet. So I'll begin, shall I? Okay. Another place. I pack the car for Crosby Beach again. You shower shaving sideburns high and tight. I shove cracked buckets, spades and blankets in. You wind the bow-shaped bobbin of the kite. Our girls run fast enough to fall, just cry or fly like swallows. You are late to shore, your dumb speech foam. We do not touch at all. In all, we are not lovers anymore. Another man holds your daughter's hand, brass face, no, looking out to sea like sentries looking for a place to please. The sand black bruise, the broken boat, king's shilling spent, small honour and obey. For now you're standing still, we walk away. Daddy's boat. She makes you a little boat with a margarine tub bottom and an orange paper sail. I can't fold that into a British Forces post office email. You missed her first day at school. You missed her nativity play. 6 months tour, your theatre is war. You ring insecure on an unsecure line. I witter on kids, work, house, emitting drinks with a male friend. Paranoid thoughts, another insurgent, your letters bleed, a sleepless hell, sniper shots, hobbled little boys, patch them up and send them on to guns, not toys. And I can't think straight about the things you learn while she learns, what you destroy while she creates. I'm almost hating you, the army and this world. Shape myself and get a grip. There must be more to life than this, with a bright idea and a bit of hope. I take this childish, fragile boat, get a shoebox to send to Afghanistan, tissue paper crumpled in. I can't let you sink. I need you to swim. So put all your death, long days and the loneliness and all the scary stuff into this boat she made for you. The love should stop it seeping through. Oh, somebody stop this happening to us. Somebody stop this happening to me. When you come home, we'll launch that boat and you and I will be free. Land day, you're home and everything is perfect. Paroxetine can make an erection last 4 hours. Bolton's party. a response to Kipling's Recessional. It was after the inquest at the pub when we meet Private Bolton's mum. We drink to wash away the blood and joke he'd wish that he had come. She grabs your hand. Don't go yet, lest we forget. Lest we forget. She's brasso, tries to make note nice. She tells us Bolton's latest post. She hears him in the house at night and laughs to hear her lost son's ghost. She grabs your hand. Don't go yet, lest we forget. Lest we forget. Each year we're summoned to his house. It's like he's nipped out for a cig, a squaddy, do pints, shots and scouse in smoke. She sees the shape of him. It's almost like he's not gone yet, lest we forget. Lest we forget. Happy birthday, Bolton lad. They ask you why you left. Because the army sent me fucking mad. Give it a fucking rest. I grab your hand. We can't go yet. Lest we forget. Lest we forget. 3 years on, the parties burr. Uncomfortable, we understand. I ask her if his ghost's still there. No, love, she says, with shaking hands. No monument to him. No parties anymore. When we forget, can we move on? Who's all this fighting for? Remembrance someday. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tick, tick tock. See the sterile clock with its can legs, the frou ticking of the red second hand. No, the third hand. Seconds are amputated. Only 3 fingers, a capital letter T. Tut, tut, tut. Time disagrees with your use of it. It clicks as a horse clops as the plaque of the princess shoes of a child on laminate floor. Shh, be quiet. Daddy's in bed. Daddy's been asleep for a long time. Jam a pen in the march of that clock and turn it forwards. Wait. Daddy's in the bath, body temperature, where blood like egg yolk flowers in bath water, the poppy dropped on blue lino at the side of the bath. A prick of the pen, a rake of the knife, and that plastic green stem is whirring around and round, tick, 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 twitching, defibrillating. The raw red paper of helicopter blades begin to hum and roar. Men scream in relief and always wait. The morphine's wearing off. This man, this boy is still alive. Hand over to the doctors. They can fly away without jumping. From the white of the bath, like the white of the ward, like the white of the eyes of the 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3 boys who you saved, who were supposed to survive. Like the white of the poppy, the pacifist words, like the white of your anger, like the white shrouds of Afghan dead, like the dirty white of my wedding vows, like the white teeth of Azad haggling for chickens, like the white of the fallen feathers, like the white of divorce papers in the shredder, like the white of the skirting budge you scrub and scrub, like the white of the toothpaste on your daughter's cheek, like the white bone of the domino. Clock face, about turn left, match. Remembrance Sunday, a service, a cenotaph, Inks shopping precinct were watched by William Hill and Nisa, watched by Tattoos by Lisa, watched by the Colonel, you know, the KFC. The kids made bucket full of the cloths at school. Mummy, look, she wears it as a garland. You won't wear your medals. A spattering of soldiers. Holes, holes, soldiers, the spines curve, the ramrod frames of them sink into the earth, bodies like mud dolls, skin trying to fall from faces like red roads of leaves aching with gravity, like dry yellow leaves aching with poverty, a meme echoing round my skull. Fight for your world, not for your country. Fight for your world, not for your country. And you're sort of timeless. You're still somehow away. I tried to catch your eye. No eye contact with the enemy. Umbilical heights. Buds of opium nod like shaven heads. You're dreaming of marching at night, waist high in stinking water, irrigated melon fields, chains grow like Christmas baubles and incendiary devices, and the dog didn't find it, and the metal detectors didn't find it, and the inside is red and wet, painting the sand like a pollock. And you're scrubbing your hands, you're scrubbing your hands, you're scrubbing your hands. Fast forward, fast forward. This bit of my life, I am warm, sat in a flat at the top of the high rises with my great uncle Pat, bedbound. And the view of this northern town of canals, industrial estates and mossed over mine shafts is magical. Our Pat tells me about his dad, glad to join up at 17. No blacks, no dogs, no Irish, no work for us. Great Grandad Collins, a prisoner of war for 6 months. 6 months tour your theatre is war in Mesopotamia or nowadays Iraq, and something inside me cracks. The Iraqi women encircling British soldiers to stop their husbands from killing them in 1906. Something inside me cracks while the CO, that's commanding officer to you, while the CEO welcomes them back in 1907 with all my poor boys, my poor boys. Will we never hear the end of it? That green plastic needle on the gramophone keeps hiccuping, keeps hopping, keeps jumping. The same story again and again, a broken red record, round and round, remembrance someday. The little plastic and paper poppy burns passed down and down. Why do we remember but never seem to learn? And you're washing your hands, you're washing your hands, you're washing your hands. Thank you.
Everyone else, didn't they? Hey! Well done. Thank you, Louise. That was astonishingly good, and I like your musical number. We were wondering about it, weren't we? But that was incredible. And I think, you know, what what that did for me was just talked about chaos of living and of war and the connections between all those things. It's so powerful and such an amazing pamphlet. So this is the one. Hope you enjoyed it, Louise. It's great having you with us. And I'm just having such a good night. One of the things I keep saying to people, anyone who will listen really, one of the things that I love about my job is just being able to do this and being able to hear amazing poets read, and you know, I've essentially created it for me really. So it's good that other people are here. I'm really happy for that. And just really enjoyed tonight's performances. So our final reading is Shazia Qureshi, and you know, I'm really looking forward to this. I was so pleased when I managed to twist her arm into writing this for us. You're already writing it, weren't you? But giving it to us to publish. It's such a wonderful book. I met Shazia at Verve again. She came to our very first year back in 2017. And I think probably one of the first poets I booked that first year. And I really loved your performance then. You were reading from The Art of Scratching, your debut collection with Blood Axe that came out in 2015. And finally, more poems, finally, hooray! Taxidermist is such a wonderful collection. I'm going to read what it says on the back of this, just to give you a sense of what it does. I think Shazia is a quite singular poet, and singularity comes from the real precision and also the deep beauty of how she writes. So what it says is, what has the body of a white mouse to show us? What is art? And how can we live with death? There's some good questions for us. The contemplative and poised poems in this collection tackle the vast questions of life and art. Their simplicity is beguiling, their vocabulary hypnotic, as tiny details build slowly, calmly, to create a vision as broad as existence itself. That's really sums up this collection. I'll let Shazia talk you through her performance now, and I'm really looking forward to hearing you read, Shazia. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much to Stuart, and thank you for everyone for joining us. So I realized I was becoming a little bit obsessed with taxidermists, and particularly in the last kind of 8 to 10 years, there have been a lot of young women taxidermists, which is quite a new thing because they used to be men. And I was really interested. I wasn't quite sure. It's one of those things where you're not sure why you're interested in something, but unpicking it, I suppose, perhaps it's because of just having quite a lot of people in my life over the last few years who had died, and just always thinking about, you know, what is their afterlife? What are we left with after someone dies? I just found the art of taxidermy really intriguing. And I had this sort of, I think maybe like a romantic idea about it. So I went and did a workshop where I taxidermied, I don't know if that's the verb, a white mouse, because that was only $54.95. It was the cheapest thing you could do. And it's actually far more gory than I expected. So anyway, I'm just going to start reading. And yeah, I've really enjoyed the other readings. It's great to be in this company, the company of Carrie and Helen and Louise. So I'm going to start at the beginning. Day 1. She wakes to birdsong, sun slats on the floor, suitcase by the door spills clothes, quiet of the house, a cocoon, a skin. At the table, she waits for the mouse to thaw. Scalpel, tweezers, calipers, pins, pipe cleaners, wire, scissors, needle, thread, straw. Begins, taking apart, putting together. A white mouse, 3. What has a white mouse to show us? I meet him, white, mute item. Fate, air hums with it. He was, he is. I sew him shut, wish him home. She remembers swimming in a river by her brother's house, its current cold, insistent. How once she let it carry her too far before climbing the high bank to walk back over pine needles, hard earth, stones. How her brother later told her he watched from a window until he saw her, red swimsuit, flickering through the trees. I thought I might just say something about, I've become increasingly really interested in form, and when Stuart suggested a pamphlet, I was really intrigued by the possibilities, by the constraints of the size and the story, the narrative that it could contain, and also by the white space to quite an anal degree. So I found out how many lines there are on the page and how many characters on a line, just to see how I could place and how I could work with the space as well as the words. And the taxidermy poems are actually, the form they use is an anagram form, which is inspired by the French post-surrealist group Oulipo, which stands for Ouvroir Potentiel de Littérature. And it's a group of scientists, mathematicians, and writers who embrace constraint as a kind of creative engine. So all the taxidermy poems, like the White Mouse poems, are made of anagrams. And what was really interesting to me and unexpected is that with a kind of limited palette of letters and limited words, you also have this kind of soundscape. So you get a lot of echoes, which was really interesting. Right. Day 6. Morning light, coffee, white butterfly on the coral bougainvillea. The average lifespan of a butterfly is a month. This small butterfly will live perhaps a week. That's a full life. Hummingbird? Perhaps the idea of the bird, rather than the bird itself. Something, speed and stop, says hummingbird. Jessica, the woman at the shop, said if you wait for it or want it too much, it won't come. How to not want something? Van playing a jingle about propane gas supply goes by. Dust settles back on the road. She takes the hummingbird from the freezer. The boy down the road found it under a hibiscus bush. They like red flowers. Chuparosa, he called it. Rose drinker. Sometimes they sleep so deeply, letargo. It's like they're dead. But this is not sleep, he said. I checked. Nestled in the palm of her hand, wings tucked in as though cold, she regrets her wish to see one so close. I'm just going to check my time. Oh, and I should say it's not explicitly stated, but this takes place in Mexico, and the premise is that this taxidermy artist is on an artist retreat, and I happen to be on an artist retreat just outside Oaxaca, so I hadn't actually planned that this would be the setting, but that's just how it happened. And also, actually, what I found really interesting I was working on, in quite a focused way on this over lockdown. So I got back from Mexico in March, just in the nick of time. And I think lockdown really influenced somehow just the feel of it. For one thing, she doesn't really see anyone else except this little boy, Javi, who lives down the road. But it's a very kind of insular world here. This is Dusky Hummingbird. Dun bird, unbusy ruby nib, iris inky, sky hung him. And I'm going to finish with by reading something called Reading. A devastating pestilence swept through London. The dying boarded up in their homes. Theatres, bear-baiting yards, brothels closed. As Shakespeare wrote, a Greenland shark still alive today swam untroubled through the waters of the northern seas. For thousands of years, Greenland sharks have swum in silence. Above them, the world has burned, rebuilt, burned. The largest, a 16-foot female, between 272 and 512 years old, size a relatively good indicator of age. There are records of sharks reaching 24 feet long. It's very possible there are sharks in the water today, well into their 6th century. Not obviously beautiful, its face is blunt, its fins stunted, smell of pea. In Inuit legend, the shark is said to have arisen from the chamber pot of Sedna, goddess of the sea. At full speed, with strenuous effort, it moves between 1.7 and 2.2 miles per hour. They lead secret lives, prefer to be close to the bottom of the ocean where it's dark and cold, 6 Eiffel Towers deep. Nobody has seen one give birth. They live so far below ships and divers. We do not know. They may be everywhere. The ocean goes deep and cold. They could be closer than we think. Thank you.
Shazia. Fantastic. We're losing our panelists with children, aren't we? That's what's happening. Oh, I thought that was amazing. And oh, Helen's back. Hi, Helen. I thought that was incredible. And looking at the chat, that's definitely the feel of the mysterious audience as well. Wonderfully read as well. I remember, I mean, I think it's difficult with this, I think, it's kind of a big one read, isn't it? For me, I just really enjoyed getting lost in this and reading it all in one go and just really feeling the way the poems move between each other and, you know, the narrative arc of it as well. But it's amazing how steeped in your year this feels, doesn't it? Because you did that traveling, you got locked down as we all did, and it's all kind of appeared in here. So thank you very much. I'm thrilled with this and thrilled to have it on the press. Just to remind anyone who loved these poems as much as I did, all these poems, we've had such a good reading. They're free P&P on the website, no postage charge, and you can support some wonderful poets. I'm going to start a conversation, I think, and I think we've got a few questions in the chat as well. But what I'd quite like to ask, and I'm asking you all, so you can all kind of fight to see who jumps in first, I think. So the thing that defines tonight, other than Verve Poetry Press, other than, well, quite a varied kind of approach to some similar themes, I'd say. But the big kind of combining factor is the pamphlet. So I was wondering what you all thought the pamphlet offers that perhaps a bigger collection doesn't, or that kind of publishing magazines and anthologies doesn't? What is the pamphlet? What has it given you in terms of being able to do something you wouldn't normally do? Carrie wants to answer.
I do, because it's really, it enabled me to do this project. You know, I didn't know quite what direction this was going to go when I started. And in fact, I should say that originally I was going to do a different pamphlet with Verve.
Yeah.
I got started on this project and I thought, and as it took off, especially when the second series of prose poems started, I thought, this is pamphlet sized.
Yeah.
And that was really delightful because it would allowed me to do this kind of discrete project of, you know, 24 poems, 2 series of 12. And I'm not sure that these would really fit well. Like if I tried to stretch this out to a book, that wouldn't work. It would, you know, overdo it. I just feel like this is just the right size for this particular project. And so, you know, I'm just, you know, both thrilled and relieved that I had, you know, the right opportunity at the right time with these poems. So thank you so much.
Yeah. And there does seem to be a timeliness factor. That's what I'm kind of, because collections take so much longer to write and pull together anyway. And also they often end up being a bit hodgepodgey, don't they? There's kind of bits from different places and glued together a bit tentatively. But I mean, certainly with you, Shazia, you this was very much what you needed to write right now, wasn't it? And quite quickly, I think.
Yeah. Also, it had been a long time since my collection, just things that happened. But also, I really agree with what Carrie said. It's a bit like it just allows you to hold a particular size story and also kind of to sustain it, like as if it's all in one breath. Or that was my feeling anyway, in a way that was that I just really, really enjoyed. That I think a collection, you wouldn't be able to maybe sustain that sort of that level of focus or intensity, you know. So yeah, I really loved. I just loved the opportunity to do this. So thank you so much.
Yeah. What about you, Louise? Because you're a performer. You're doing lots of books too. But how does this fit in this kind of length of book for you? How did that help?
For me, one of the beautiful things about this pamphlet is that if I wanted to read every single poem in it, I could read it in like a half an hour slot, maybe 40-minute slot. So that's kind of exciting because so much of my work is like performing and doing live work that in my full length collections, I'm always picking and choosing and deciding what sort of set it is. Is this a more entertaining set? Is this like a darker set? Whereas with this, I don't, you know, I could do the full pamphlet and not have to make those choices, and then people get the full picture rather than like what I've decided the experience of this book should be. So I think that's quite good for me.
Yeah. Brilliant. And Helen, your pamphlet, which we heard about so long ago since you read, it's very much, it felt like a kind of first response or a first set of responses to a situation, but you're now writing a longer piece. And what's the relationship between your pamphlet and what you're going to go on to write, do you think?
Well, just to echo the other poets as well, because the subject of Matt is quite a raw one, it felt like it could only be, I realised this over time, but I feel like it can only really be properly explored like with a focus in a shorter collection, because it just gives it the attention it needs. I think you can sort of, I don't want to say drag it out, but you can lose the focus, like just that lens over the feeling and the emotion and the explosion of what happened. If you like, it can be kind of refined a lot better, I think, in a shorter work. But this has been a really pivotal collection for me, because I found a voice in there that I didn't have before, and now that voice is broadening out into other subjects. and I'm finding it very hard to write about Matthew in the same way as I have with this, because it was for this book, it was meant to be this pamphlet. So it's definitely been a launch pad, and as well, it's a thing in its own right. It's not just that. It's definitely not just that. It's complete in itself, but it could only work. I think the more I think about it, if I did a full collection, it wouldn't feel the same. I think it has to be concise like that.
Yeah. It's quite hard to, I mean, one thing that pamphlets do is that they allow you to kind of strike a single tone, don't they, in a lot of ways. I mean, I think all your books do, they're not, oh, not another poem the same. It's not like that. What I mean is that, you know, overall the poems really point in one way in some senses and deal with one subject and quite strongly, or deal with a couple of really closely met subjects. And I think when a collection comes along, it seems difficult to sustain that, doesn't it? And so collections do open out. What do you prefer, collections or pamphlets? We do both, so that, you know, it's fine.
That's so hard to answer. They both serve different purposes.
Yeah.
I do love pamphlets. I love like the rawness of them and how explosive they can be. But I think both serve, they have different, you know, they have different, they offer something different to the reader in equal amounts.
Anyone else?
No, I completely agree. I'd be at a loss if one of them went away, you know, if I only had the option of one or the other, because it feels like, you know, not so much the case with this one, but previously, previous to my last two books, the pamphlet was kind of a testing ground for some of the work. And that was really useful for developing the larger manuscript.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. So we've had a question from the audience. We're very pleased. We want more questions. Otherwise, I'll think up my boring ones. And the questions around the issue of well, not the issue of mortality, the subject of mortality, I suppose. And it does feel like all your work has kind of covered issues to do with mortality in different ways. It does seem a bit of a poetry ever present. And so the question is poetry kind of specially designed to be able to cope with subjects like this? Is poetry, is it what poetry can do? Louise?
Yeah, I just think like in this particular pamphlet, because it's modern war poetry, like in some, like people say war poetry, some people groan and other people are like, this was my introduction to poetry at school. So there's a strong tradition of war poetry and immortalizing heroes and kind of understanding what goes on in the ground. So I think that in terms of mortality and recognizing it, war poetry is kind of like a tradition of that, and I wanted to write from the perspective of being like an army wife, and also like what being on the other side of shell shock or PTSD looks like. So for me, I suppose it's part of a tradition.
Yeah, great. Karen?
I'm still sometimes a bit apologetic when I'm going to give a reading of work that is, you know, about mortality or loss. But on the other hand, it's, you know, it's where I go to figure things out. And I think that's the reason why, you know, we do write about the difficult subjects, and, you know, it's not all, you know, sweetness and light, is that poetry is what we go to try to unpick these things and understand them. And, you know, for me, I know that's how it started. I mean, that's been the case for over 30 years. And I do occasionally write happy poems. But they're, you know, they're kind of like, you know, maybe one happy poem for every 30, you know, that might be good odds for every kind of 30 poems that are, you know, taking on, you know, mortality and loss and so on. I was joking on Twitter today that following this pamphlet, maybe the next pamphlet, it's got to be like a book of odes, you know, just celebrate for a little while as a way, as a bit of a remedy. But I'm not sure that's really going to happen.
It's a bit like indie bands, isn't it? I've decided poets and indie bands. It's hard to write. Happy poems are really hard to write. I mean, there are some amazing examples of them, but you know, we need to stew, don't we, really? That's why I'm called Stew.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I think maybe we don't need so much to be accompanied when in our happiness, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas the kind of difficult stuff is the stuff that we want to sort of think about and work out and perhaps kind of share and feel like we're not alone in it. And also, I just think poetry is so great at kind of holding the two things. You know, Helen talked, you know, about the light, you know, so as dark as the darkness is, that kind of just the light is even more intense. So for me, there's like, you know, in the face of death, there is also just this kind of real gratefulness to be alive, or I know, and just a real sort of awareness of you know, just how kind of precious and amazing it is to be alive.
Yeah. Fabulous. So I've got this is an interesting, you can stand for this, Shazia. It's got an interesting question here. Okay, so how do you respond to the idea that artists show their scars rather than their wounds? Do the things you're writing about feel healed? As in, are you better?
I'll jump in, Stuart, just very quickly. I think, like, for this particular pamphlet works on two levels. So if we're talking about the pain you feel in a relationship and work, you know, some like living with someone with PTSD, yeah, no, that is totally healed, and I feel quite comfortable sharing that in a public space. When I perform it, I kind of engage with those feelings again, but it feels quite safe. So for me, it might make you feel uncomfortable, but I don't feel uncomfortable. I'm at peace with it. But the idea of economic conscription and war, no, that's not healed. It's a provocation, and that's why I'm offering it, because like war's bad. Like, why are we still doing it? What we're learning? Why are we making it in this amazing thing? That like, why is the poppy day? So for me, those bits aren't healed, and that's why it's relevant to share it, because it's like not just my experience, it's like a wider experience in the world that I want people to think about.
True. Good. Thank you. Is anyone else healed, Carrie?
Oh, I was going to say, do we heal? But I completely agree. In fact, I was just typing a response to Louise. I know exactly what you mean about when you perform, how it brings something up again. You know, my third book is about giving up my son for adoption, and I, you know, sometimes when I read those poems, even now that, you know, that I found him and we're in touch and the rest of it, sometimes I perform those poems and I feel what I felt all those years all over again, as though the present, you know, as though I, you know, I hadn't moved on from it. And that's one of the hard things about performance and really inhabiting a performance, I think.
Yeah. Helen?
I don't know if it heals, because I'm of the belief that you don't really heal, you just adapt. So that's how I feel about it. There is a healing process. It is very. I don't like to use the word cathartic, but it does aid that process, definitely. And I think it's very important to talk about these things very openly, because I just think it's the only way to process it. Well, for me anyway, to process it with others and through poetry. It's somebody said something about it being quite a safe space. Was that Louise that said it was safe? Or was it Carrie? Someone said it felt safe. It does feel safe to kind of like discuss it in that format, because it's a platform, I guess. So it's not you, it's you and the poem, yeah. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was healing. I would say that it can aid the process. Yeah.
Is there more healing in the writing or the performing?
I think I have to say, for me, it's when I read it, because when I'm writing it, I'm working, I'm being very objective. And so it's like there's a kind of certain level of sense of distance rather. But then when I read it, it feels very intimate, and like it's quite a lot for me to do that, because I kind of really feel it all over again. Like Carrie said, you can be right back there. That's a very that is a very healing thing for me to do, to read it. I think it's more that.
Anyone else?
That's interesting. For me, I think it's more writing. I think writing is where I sort of work things through and maybe make sense of things. And I was also thinking about, writing about death and loss, and really what that's about, I think, is love, isn't it? Love, lost, and sort of grief is also about love. So in the end, I mean, really everything is about love. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Nice note. It's a nice note we've just reached. I think that might be a good point to end. Although I don't want to end at all. I think we should stay here till midnight. But I've had a fabulous night. As I've said already, that was why we're doing this, so I could have a fabulous night. And I have had one. So I really hope the quiet audience have had a great night. I hope you enjoyed seeing these wonderful 4 poets. What I really hope is that we all stay in touch, and that, I like the fact that you 4 have kind of met or re-met or whatever, and I think you all obviously like what each other does, and I think that's a lovely thing to take forwards. We don't see people very often, so it's nice to have this moment, and also to read. I don't know if it's hearing or reading the chat, but we're getting all sorts of lovely messages from the people who've been watching, which we will pour over as well. We have recorded this event, but who knows what state it's in, and it probably needs some mega editing, which I'll try and do. So we'll try and get that up for people to see who've missed it, or to re-see. It has been a very busy poetry night in the UK. Lots of other things going on, so we'll definitely get this up for more people to see. I do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you are moved to get these pamphlets, because I don't need you to, but I think you should. They're amazing. Has anyone else got anything to add before we go?
Thank everybody for coming.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Fabulous. And thank you all for glorious reading. And
thank you for having us, Stuart and Cynthia.
Yeah, thank you for all everything, Stuart. You've been amazing.
Yeah, thank
I'll
you.
do my best. Just thank you very much. Take care.
Good night, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.